record. Thank you all for joining this group. Such a nice turnout. We love it. Because we all know this is the most important goal, SDG goal 1 of ending child poverty. So I'm glad you all agree. This is just a session for you to ask us questions. Most of you are in the process of developing your VNRs. We can also give some tips. And yeah, have a conversation on what's a good VNR reflecting, children in poverty, public finance, and social protection. So maybe we could have a bit of a round of which countries are here. Louise, you could maybe start.
Sure. So I'm from UNICEF Sri Lanka, and I'm joined by my colleague Khadija Firas, who will be providing support for this VNR process as well. Thank you.
Great. Welcome. Other countries here, Christelle?
Yes, Sola, good morning.
Morning.
Yep, morning, participant, morning, Louise, good to see you. I'm sorry, I tried to put on my camera, but my internet is not very stable.
No problem.
So, okay, yes, really good to be here. I'm based in UNICEF Somalia, but currently teleworking. And then, yes, we have the team of the National Statistics Bureau that we are supporting in elaborating this VNR. I believe they all joined the data session because they are the Office of Statistics and they are the national institution that was entrusted in realizing this VNR. So really happy to be in this session and hoping to really enjoying our fruitful discussions.
Great. If there's other countries that want to just let us know, or we can just get started. There's so many here. I don't know if we can go through all.
Hi.
Hi, Paulina.
Paulina from Ghana office, UNICEF. Hi, Louise. Yeah, and we are starting also this year the VNR, and we are supporting quite closely already the government. So very eager to hear more ideas.
Great. Great. I see Madagascar. Hi, Erica.
Yeah, hi. Very nice to be here with you today. We went through the VNR process last year, but we're still very eager to learn more, improve, thinking about the next one.
Great. And maybe you could give tips also when people have questions. Do you guys want to start off with questions, or do you want to start us starting off with some tips? I think I'm going to put you all on the spot. Ask us questions. And I'll call out names if you don't.
Sola.
Hi.
Hi, this is Anna from Equatorial Guinea Country Office. It's a pleasure to join us such a social policy network, because now I have a new role, but I miss my former role in social policy as well. I was wondering, because I remember in the first rounds of VNRs, there were some years there were SDGs that were highlighted, that were prioritized for the countries to report against. And I was wondering if that's the case this year, because, previously I was in Peru, and I remember that there were 4 or 5 SDGs goals that were prioritized back then. We negotiated with the government for them to put a special attention on reporting against those indicators and goals. But I don't know if this year we have such a priority issues umbrella. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very right. It started off this way, very much like each year there will be certain goals that countries focused on, but then they realized countries want to report on all of the goals. But I do think every year they do say, these are the few goals we're going to focus on this year. But when you think about it, it doesn't make so much sense if countries are reporting every few years. They're missing out on some key goals. And not having, for example, SDG goal doesn't make much sense. So even though there is this emphasis on, let's focus on SDG 10 and 13 and whatever, you would always see countries, thankfully, give a good overview of SDG 1 in the very least, and usually they go for all of them. But I don't know if others know what the focus is on this year. Luisi, you're saying 4 and 5.
4, 5, and there's another one, Khadija, but 4, 5, I remember because they relate to subjects in which we work. I think the other one is
17 on partnership. Yeah.
But like I said, it's very rare to find a report now that wouldn't focus on, have a specific chapter on SDG 1. So I would encourage you all, even though the focus is not this year on that one, to really dive deep into that. For example, Khadija and Luisi, you have so much to report on now. You have multidimensional child poverty measure, you have all the COVID related kind of recovery measures. So I would hope to see that all there super well reflected. And just that minor, very practical tip, because I've literally gone through all the VNRs, is have a statistical annex, if possible, and just really clearly outline in the chapter, this is child focused. These policies were put in place with children in mind, reaching the most vulnerable, etc. So we can really see it, and we can really, as I said before, celebrate it. We're not only putting countries, on the spot. Why are you not measuring child poverty? We're 6 years into the SDGs. You still don't have a baseline, etc. Which most countries do not. So do not worry if you don't have a baseline for child poverty. But yeah, we really want to celebrate the successes of countries that have prioritized reaching children in poverty, children left furthest behind, etc. Jenny, do you want to add anything?
Just the, I'm really happy actually we have Ghana on the call, because Ghana's VNRs have been fantastic in the way they've identified financing and the really comprehensive process to identify SDGs within the budget and then be able to talk about the government's investment linked to its national development plan and the SDGs. But obviously, being able to report on the big social sector investments in health, education and social protection is really important, and typically is possible given that these are normally managed by a lead ministry. But I do want to encourage people to look for opportunities to be able to report on these cross-cutting investments. So looking at investments like child protection and early childhood development, which cut across multiple ministries and multiple goals, and being able to demonstrate how the government is ensuring that these really critical investments in early childhood are being protected. The second thing I wanted to mention is obviously the impact of COVID is having an impact on the results on the SDGs, and we're seeing more and more reports of governments obviously struggling with situations of debt and dealing with fiscal austerity, being forced to make cuts or restrict programs. So really being able to reflect on those challenges in terms of what that's meant for financing and highlight what it has been possible to preserve and protect, I think is really important, and an opportunity to show what can be done, and also just an opportunity to improve the transparency for what is actually happening.
Yeah. Stefan, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the useful tips. I just wanted to ask you two questions. We in Montenegro are embarking on the process of VNR preparation for this year. It's our second report, and I was just wondering, since you mentioned, Sola, that many countries are struggling with the baseline for poverty. We are one of these countries, but we do follow this at risk of poverty measure, which is an EU silk measure. So I was just wondering, can we use that as some kind of a proxy, because the World Bank measures are not, I would say, good for our context. And the second one is what also Jenny was mentioning about somehow reflecting the work on multidimensional poverty in other SDGs. So not to stick only maybe on SDG 1. Is that the option? So we can mention probably our work in multidimensional poverty in SDG 4. When we are talking about education, where we have in Montenegro introduced, for instance, free textbooks for all primary school children and so on. So is this an option, or we basically focus on SDG 1 when we are talking about child multidimensional poverty? So these two questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. On the child poverty measurement and baseline, you don't need to worry at all or report on the extreme poverty one, because that's an international poverty line, and the World Bank is the main kind of custodian who takes care of that. If you have that for children, which not many countries do, who have that disaggregated, report on it. But obviously for Montenegro, as you said, it's not relevant unless you go to the 350, 550 poverty line. On the AROPE, yeah, it absolutely is considered as a baseline of child poverty. If you look into the SDG official database that the UN runs, you see actually a lot of the statistics there are AROPE. For those of you, it's this at risk of poverty measure that is used for a number of countries in the EU. So yeah, you can definitely report on that. But in Montenegro, you also had a multidimensional child poverty study last year. So
Yes, we
yeah.
had that, but this is not a national, I would say, adopted measure. It's just a UNICEF, I would say,
It's a
study
UNICEF,
done with that, done based on the mixed 2018 data.
Yeah, exactly. So it's probably not going to end up in the SDG database, for example. But another thing from Montenegro, obviously, besides the child poverty measurement, is the amazing news on the universal child benefit being adopted. So like,
yes, we will definitely
dedicate a
highlight
page
that.
to that. Dedicate a page to that, at least in the VNR, and celebrate that one. That's amazing. Jenny, over to you.
Thank you. And I think, Sola, this is something you may want to come in on as well. But I think it is fantastic to be able to demonstrate within each of the goals the progress that is being done in relation to investments and equity focused investments and investments which are expected to have an impact on multidimensional child poverty. It is important for people who are focusing on poverty to be able to find what they need within goal 1 if someone is dipping in and out of a report. But within the other goals, if you can show those links, I think it's a very strong case, and it shows that the SDGs are interrelated. And particularly when you're talking about investments, being able to show equity-focused investments is really important and really powerful. It is, of course, more challenging with the data, but it sounds like you actually have great data and very clearly defined policies. So I'm actually already looking forward to reading the VNR.
Thank you very much.
Christelle.
Yes, mine is to share a bit of a concern because Somalia has almost like no data at all. We just completed a GHS last year, and before that, the poverty data that we had were coming from the high frequency survey from the World Bank. So now we have put in our work plan the realization of multidimensional poverty using the MODA, and we have not started yet. So we really hope that by the time that we will be doing the VNR, at least the preliminary results will be available to share. Otherwise, as of now, we don't even have the baseline, like Stefan was mentioning. Another thing is that the office recently engaged in public financing. It was not part of our work program, our work plan before. We started, and before coming to this meeting, we had a very interesting workshop about the gender and the conversation between gender and social policy. So Bob made a very nice presentation, interesting presentation there on the gender responsive budgeting, which is also an area of work where we are going to engage very soon. So I think that the themes of this year, goal SDG 4 and 5, really fit within UNICEF engagement and within also the National Statistics Bureau engagement. But the thing is that to what extent can we have a report with not much data to present? Is there going to be like only narrative, or shall we highlight the challenges that we are experiencing, at least at this point in the VNR? So yes, that was my question. Thank you.
So Somalia will do the VNR for 2023 then, I guess?
2022.
Oh, they're doing it this year, okay.
Yeah, they are presenting in July.
Okay. I think everybody fully understands that in some situations, data situation is very complex and challenging, and you know, you just put a good narrative. But I think the most important thing is to then reflect that there's a lot of effort to try to rectify the situation, try to increase data collection when possible. So I think that's fine. As you say, it will just be more of a narrative, less with data. Another thing is to consider also is partnering with you know, UNDP and others who might have some kind of input in these areas. But as I said before, even though the focus is not on SDG Goal 1 this year, I would imagine for a country like Somalia, they would want to say something in terms of how they're reaching the most vulnerable, the poorest, etc. So I think, you know, putting a narrative on the policies and programs, even though there's no data on child poverty, that's fine. But still to outline, you know, how is not UNICEF but the government reaching the most vulnerable. Jen, you want to add anything?
No, echo your points on do what you can in the narrative to give concrete examples linked to government programs where you have them, and to set out the plan to strengthen the data and the reporting and the monitoring. You know, gender-based budgeting is a great tool. I'm not sure what the quality of the budget data is, but it should hopefully be possible to at least report on trends in the main sectors. If you know, that can help spell out the narrative, showing you a fluctuation in funding or a positive trend, or how support to education or health or social protection have been preserved even within a shrinking budget, can be very powerful.
Yeah, and I see the same issues in Equatorial Guinea on data. So yeah, again, I mean, we're fully aware in many countries this is a big challenge, but as long as it's reflected how much is being done to try and get around the situation, I think that will be good.
Thank you.
Jenny, there's also a question from Carlos in Jamaica.
I mean, I wish there was a simple best practice, but the policies, you're coming up with an equitable policy. It really depends on context, and it really depends on understanding and defining who are the most vulnerable and who are excluded or restricted from accessing current support. So that there isn't a single recommendation here, but this is one of the reasons it is so important to reflect on issues such as multidimensional child poverty, as that's a great way of identifying what some of the barriers are for children and where perhaps investment needs to be focused. And then within programs, looking at who is currently excluded or who is most at risk. So if you have that type of information, then that's going to affect how you're looking to support the development of policies. And then, of course, that's what you want to report on to demonstrate that policies are becoming more equitable or are becoming better funded or are being executed better. And just something to mention, it relates to your question, but it's a broader point. But a lot of the time we're talking about investment that was committed, but not necessarily talking about how that investment or that plan or that goal was then translated into results, or how a budget was actually spent. So there is a specific indicator on that, which is 16.6.1, which is talking about, did the budget as it was approved get executed in the same way? And that demonstrates it's not just making a commitment from the government in the budget, but it's actually been executed as intended. So this is another area that it could be worth bringing out, that it's unfortunately reaching the most vulnerable is often the most challenging. So if you're looking at a government investment being underspent, it is often underspent in those areas that we would consider to be some of the highest priorities. So reaching rural areas, remote areas, vulnerable communities. If it's harder, it's more likely to be delayed or deferred. So focusing in on this issue of, is the budget being implemented as intended, can be powerful in that sense.
Great. And I see also here a question from Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie, and Save the Children, on whether UNICEF is primarily looking to influence the government's official VNR report. Yeah, I mean, our role is fully to support the government in their VNR reporting. So we don't do complementary reporting for the countries. Is that something that SAVE does?
Thank you, Scylla, for your answer. The country offices had at times worked in coalition with other civil society organizations on complementary reporting. And over the last few years, we've also worked with children in a few countries, namely Zambia and Indonesia, to do a child-led report, often together with a local civil society partner.
Great. I see there's other civil societies, World Vision is here and others if they want to add in. Erica, I wanted to put you on the spot. Is there any kind of, since you've gone through this process, but I know you want to learn some more tips, but do you have any kind of basic tips for us?
Thanks so much. Well, I think for us it's been very useful to work as one UN. So since the very beginning, basically 1 year before the actual report, we started the consultations with other UN agency and the resident coordinator office to really work together and with the government on this process. So we've been very collaborative and aligned in our messaging to government in terms of ensuring we can present as many data as possible. We can best utilize current M&E systems in the country, even if of course they're not perfect, but still they can provide us with some information. And also we can make use of all evaluations that have been carried out in the past to inform the report. So I think for us this has been very useful to really work as one UN and make sure we can enhance all the data evidence we have and use it in the VNR report.
Great, yeah, I think that's a very useful tip. Working together with other UN agencies and civil society. Luisi, you want to go back?
Yes, sorry, I had to jump in the car and I got disconnected for a bit. So sorry if that my question has already been addressed. But I think one of the things I'm thinking about is and I thanks Jenny for mentioning the VNRs from Ghana. I look forward to taking a look at it because on the issue of the financing, budgets, expenditure, I am curious to see how we can support the government in fleshing out, the expenditure on children, because of course we as UNICEF, and I know others do budget analysis, they're not specifically expenditure on children, they're on social sectors, but I'm curious to see how we can support this part of public finance and investment, particularly in children in the VNRs. And then also we have Sally here from IBP. This year, I guess soon, there will be the launch of the OBS, 2021, I guess, Sally. So like also how do we use that moment as well, or that data to make the linkage between open budgets, participation, oversight, and then investments in children. So happy to see good examples and have ideas on how to do those things. Thank you.
Great. Jen, you want to add anything to that?
Actually, I wanted to see if Sally wanted to share anything. I know you've got your hands full with wrapping up the OBS right now, but your opportunities or things that you would recommend about leveraging that information in the VNR? And then I'll come back very quickly on the expenditure on children.
Well, thanks so much, Jenny. And this is a very interesting conversation, so glad to be a part of it. So yes, for those of you who don't know us, we're the International Budget Partnership, and one of the things that we do work on is the Open Budget Survey. We release it every 2 years, and we do an international comparison, so kind of comparative between countries on standard indicators of releasing budget information, so budget transparency, public participation in the budget, and then oversight of the budget. And the next edition is coming out at the end of May 2021. So I'll encourage you to take a look at it when it comes out. But we have in the past really tried to make the argument that if you are trying to track spending on the SDGs, you have to have public access to budget information. And so we have a couple blog pieces. I'm going to search for them and put them up in the chat, where we've made that argument that if when you're trying to do public expenditure analysis or looking at trying to find budget data to support spending and of course the key sectors on social protection, on health and other areas, and you're finding you can't find that data, I think that's worth flagging as a transparency issue in the DNR if possible, and encouraging governments to regularly report that. We find when we work with civil society, it's a huge challenge when we're trying to talk about spending to the SDGs and to other development goals, that simply we can't track that information across the budget cycle from proposed amounts to actual what's the approved allocation, especially through expenditure. Jenny was mentioning the 16.6.1 indicator earlier, and so actual expenditure against what has been approved is a key issue. And we do see consistent underspending often in many low-income countries especially within social sectors on things like health, agriculture, especially. So having access to that information allows the public and civil society to really track and advocate for better spending practices in the areas that really will reduce poverty in the future. So yeah, thanks so much for asking.
And actually, just quickly before I come in on the you being able to report on expenditure for children, are there any countries that have recently done a VNR that would like to share the approach that they took before I give some kind of more general comments? I know we have Ghana on the line, but I don't know if the person on the line was involved in the previous VNR.
I know she wasn't because she just joined Ghana. So.
Okay, in that case, I will definitely not put you on the spot, but I do recommend that as an excellent example. I know we also have some of our regional advisors, so I also welcome them to come in, or of course people can add into the chat. But Louise, this is really getting to the crux of the issues that we have with PFM, in that where we have good financing information, it may not necessarily be possible to identify children within that information. So the typical approaches are to look at areas of financing that are either child focused or child relevant, and to some degree that can be done with sectors or subsectors. Obviously, education is a standout area. If your government has program budgeting, that can also be helpful as well, particularly if you're looking at your maternal and child health being another standout area. If the other thing is to combine data and narrative, so you can look at overall spending within the social sector and then draw out particular examples of programs and projects which are extremely child relevant within that. So to kind of use those 2 points to have a quantitative, qualitative approach to talk about overall trends in relevant spending, and then to highlight what is seen as a key government program that is specifically child focused or very important for child goals. The other thing to suggest is that the VNR process, the end result is a report which provides visibility and demonstrates government's commitment, but the actual process of working with the government on their VNR is in itself an incredible opportunity to have that conversation to be able to ask the government, are they able to demonstrate their commitment? And you're particularly a government that is committed to this, and then having a conversation about the fact that this commitment is invisible in the way that they report can produce a change about tagging data, making data more visible, and therefore giving an opportunity for better tracking and reporting in the future. So even being able to get that acknowledgement is a win and a process going forward. I see we've
Jenny,
just
we
got a
have
tag
so
for
little
1
time.
minute. Yes.
Yeah, Malama, would you want to come in very quickly?
Yeah, quickly. No, I had just wanted to say that I was part of the process with Zambia, where we actually got an opportunity for a child to actually be part of the official government delegation as they did the presentation, because we had a process where children did a shadow report, which was presented to government, but government were so impressed with the way the children articulated the issues that they had noticed about the progress Zambia has made, that they actually invited a child from that delegation to be part of the official Zambia government delegation. I think it was a win in terms of recognizing children's agency to be able to present on this process. Thank you.
Agree. Thank you. That's very important. I agree. Thank you so much, everyone. You can reach out to me and Jenny whenever. You can get the emails from, if you don't have them already, from Annalisa and Shannon. We really look forward to seeing the VNR reports and how you're highlighting all these issues as much as possible. And yeah, Jenny, anything else you want to add? No, we look forward to it. And thank you all for joining. I think, do we press leave room or they're going to take us out of here? We can just leave the room. And then
I think we leave the room.
See you in the main session.
See you in the main session for the wrap up.
Bye.
Thanks, Lulu and Jenny.